Hello and welcome to Midnight News Edition. I'm your host, Karim Faz Zachary, and these are the headlines. Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman and his French counterpart signed 11 cooperation agreements in different sectors of endeavor, emphasizing the importance of bilateral relations. Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mtala Mamra, says Algeria reached 100% of its preparation for the Arab Summit. Also in our news, at least 17 people were killed in an overnight Russian shelling on Zaporizhia that damaged the area. And Europe rises up against the US, saying it is exploiting the energy crisis to impose exaggerated high prices of alternatives to Russian gas. Welcome again to the program. Fast in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received a phone call from his French counterpart, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, on Sunday, in which they reviewed bilateral relations, expressing their satisfaction with a positive development and the level of these relations. The two presidents also touched on important areas, such as the important meeting of the fifth session of the Algerian-French High-Level Intergovernmental Committee, which is being held in Algeria, as well as the developments in the region. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne, accompanied by an important ministerial delegation, is in a two-day visit to Algeria to strengthen relations and push for better bilateral relations between the two countries. Algerian Premier Ayman bin Abdurrahman and his French counterpart signed 11 cooperation agreements in different fields of endeavor. Let's follow the report by Safian Kantouri.
French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne and 16 ministers on a two-day visit to Algeria to strengthen relations and push for better ties. The Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman and his French counterpart signed on 11 cooperation agreements in different sectors and emphasized on the importance of working together. During a press conference, the Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman underlined that the bilateral discussions touch on many sectors and that both sides agreed on win-win cooperation.
This is a win-win partnership, and we discussed files across several industries without any collusion or issues. Now is the time for the two nations to advance. We will share our experiences in all areas, and I want to thank all the ministers who contributed to the success of our discussions.
Knowing that the gas file was not included in the visit program, the French Prime Minister tackled the gas file, emphasizing that the two countries will focus on reviving and pursuing their traditional relations.
We're not like other countries indexed to spot prices. So the discussions at the European level for a threshold of these prices does not concern us in Algeria. We will follow our traditional relations.
Sur le gaz avec l'Algérie.
It's worth noting that the visit occurs a month and a half after Emmanuel Macron's trip to Algiers and Oran, which served to formally end a bitter dispute between the two nations.
And to talk more about this topic, I am joined live via Skype by Mr. Abdenour Toumi from Paris, a Maghreb affairs expert and journalist at Orsam, Turkey. First, thank you, Mr. Abdenour Toumi, for joining us. My first question is, how important is this visit of Elisabeth Borne for the bilateral ties?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Actually, it's very important, not only for the Prime Minister, Ms. Elisabeth Borne, but also for President Macron himself. And this visit comes in a very, very difficult time here in France for the French consumers. And actually, at this moment when we are speaking, there are huge lines at the gas stations, and people are worried, concerned, and to some extent nervous. And also, this could have an impact on the some actually anger and protest. Actually, there is a call from different political parties, and notably from the left, are calling for a protest on the 15th of this month. So the stake of this visit are very, very high. And actually, the Prime Minister, Ms. Bourne, is, I mean, I can understand, she would be nervous as well because it's her first, I'd say, state visit, foreign state visit, and she's going to deal with the Algerians, knowing that Algeria is in a very good position and also is, did succeed, Algerian diplomacy.
Very nice indeed. So speaking of Algerian diplomacy, Mr. Abdel Toumi, being a major gas exporter, how likely is the signing of a gas deal possible, Mr. Abdel Toumi?
It will be a plus. Algeria is not going to cover the full shortage that France needs because of what has been getting from Russia. But also, it's still, I would say, a serious amount. And Algeria would, the Algerian gas would ease the ongoing tension and the energy crisis that is actually, as I stated in the first question, the French are nervous. So not only the French, population, but also the French politicians as well. And so that President Macron is very, very anxious about that. So even though they are, the politicians and the leaders here are trying to play it safe. Saying the people don't panic, we are not on shortage. It just takes a day. And actually, they put the reason of this shortage. It's not about the shortage of the gas and oil. It's because of the ongoing strike that was launched by the Total Energy workers. So, but behind this, it is indeed France is in energy crisis and needs Algeria. Even though France are saying, okay, we are diversifying our providers from Qatar and Norway. But we know the distance and we know how Algeria is actually relevant.
Yes, very well.
Provider and could also play a major role to ease again this crisis.
Understood, Mr. Abdel Toumi. Thank you so much. Abdel Toumi, you were live with us from Paris. You are a Maghreb affairs expert and a journalist at Orsam, Turkey. Thank you so very much. Moving on now, the Algerian cabinet approved the creation of four free zones along the border strip in the far south of the country, according to a statement from the Algerian presidency, which culminated in the holding of the extraordinary meeting of the Council of Ministers, and explained that the procedure includes launching free zones in Tindouf, Timiaouine, and Tinzawatin and Al-Talib al-Arabi, which helps to achieve economic flexibility. A statement by the Algerian Council of Ministers also revealed that foreign manufacturers were allowed to import cars to sell them in Algeria in parallel with the intensive and field follow-up to the process of establishing a real car industry in Algeria as soon as possible. To a different matter now, Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Mr. Amtal Amamra, stated in a press conference that Algeria has reached 100% of its preparation for the Arab Summit, which will take place in Algeria next November. Mr. Lamamra stated that the next meeting with the Secretary General of the Arab League, Mohammed Abul Ghait, will be the last confirmation for the readiness of Algeria for the awaited summit.
I can say that we have finished the logistic preparations for the Arab Summit. After a few days, the Secretary General of the Arab League will come to Algeria for the consultations that normally take place with all organizing countries of the Arab Summit, and the meeting with Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghait will be the real end of the preparations for the summit.
التي ستجرى مع الأستاذ أحمد أبو الغيث ستكون خاتمة الفعلية للمسار التحضيري.
And in a related matter, Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Mr. Mtala Mamra, confirmed that the awaited meeting of the Palestinian groups in Algeria has been confirmed, and the meeting is scheduled for the next few days. This comes after the Palestinian groups received an official invitation from the Algerian President, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune.
I can confirm that the gathering of the Palestinian factions will soon be held here in Algeria. There is a total agreement in response to the invitation sent by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, for all the Palestinian activities.
And to neighboring Morocco now, former Moroccan Minister Mohamed Zian called for the need to put an end to the governance crisis in Morocco due to the absence of the king for a while. And the minister said that the king exercise of power via WhatsApp and Zoom has become unacceptable, and warned that known and unknown parties undertake the authority to decide, which threatens a massive popular disorder. And amid the repercussions of food and energy crisis in Morocco, the country's central bank expects the kingdom's economy to collapse sharply by the end of this year, lowering its estimate of GDP growth from 1.3% to 0.8%. The board of the Bank of Morocco has also estimated inflation could hit new record by 6.3% for the year 2022, comparing to previous forecasts of 4.9%. The Moroccan government faces other challenges, as well as food prices that are expected to rise by 13% in 2022, and accompanied by global rise in energy prices, which are expected to reach 70% by the end of the year. And according to a statement, the Malian army has launched an investigation into the French report of 53 civilian deaths in Bamako. While initially questioning the authenticity of these reports, the army called for vigilance and restraint against what it described as propaganda tendencies, brainwashing and misinformation by some media outlets whose sole aim was to sow chaos and disorder in Mali. At least 17 people were killed in an overnight Russian shelling on Zaporizhia. According to Kurtev, the secretary of the city council, the city was hit by rockets overnight, causing at least 5 private homes to be destroyed and about 40 to be damaged. Ukrainian firefighters engaged in the rescue mission to find survivors in the city.
I came here because they are my children. My grandson is 10 years old. What can I say? Do you see what happened? Who can imagine this? To live all your life. Do you see? We work and build. Am I correctly speaking, my son? Do you see what they did? Children left without a place to live. Sorry.
Still with the Russia-Ukraine file, the Crimea bridge, which had been rocked by Ukrainian forces lately, has reopened after being partially repaired. Russian authorities stated that teams are working around the clock to put the bridge in full function in the briefest days. Russian President Vladimir Putin is to hold a meeting with the Russian Security Council, which may lead to retaliation, after the event. Osama Ayadi reports.
The Crimean bridge has resumed normal transportation while the road route reopened only to light vehicles after an explosion rocked the bridge on Saturday. All buses, trucks and small vehicles with a capacity of more than 3.5 tons are still required to cross the Kerch Strait by ferry. Currently only one ferry runs between Crimea and Rustaman Peninsula, North Russia. However, the government has promised to increase that number to 3.
They say the ferries are small. They can only take 20 cars at a time. The queue is about 15 kilometers long. We estimate we spend another 8 to 10 hours until we get to the bridge.
On Sunday, long-winding queues of cars were seen waiting for access to the Crimean Bridge. Some had been waiting for 10 to 12 hours, but it was not clear when they would be able to pass. Authorities in Crimea say the peninsula has enough supplies for at least 40 days of use, including fuel, food, and daily necessities.
We have everything. The guys, the volunteers are great. They fed us, they gave water, and offered the place to have a rest.
The damaged part of the bridge will be repaired soon, and teams are working round the clock to put the bridge in function as soon as possible. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree on Saturday to strengthen measures for protecting transport crossing through the Kerch Strait, the power grid connecting Crimea and the main gas pipeline in the peninsula.
There is no doubt that this is an act of terrorism aimed at destroying Russia's critically important civilian infrastructure. And this was devised, carried out and ordered by the Ukrainian special services.
President Putin is holding an operational meeting with the Russian Security Council as well as politicians and representatives of the Russian army and security forces. Analysts consider this move as a preparation for a further escalation, which will perform the Russian retaliation on this last event. They also consider the use of nuclear power as a close option for the Russian president.
Europe is entering a critical stage in the course of its relations with the United States due to the latter's policy on its gas prices, which prompted many European governments to rise up against it and saying that the United States is exploiting the energy crisis in Europe to impose exaggerated high prices to buy gas as an alternative to Russian one.
Countries, including friendly countries, sell gas to us with astronomical prices. From this platform, we call for greater solidarity on the part of the United States to stand by its allies against the energy crisis imposed by the Russian-Ukrainian war on Europe.
And still with the same topic regarding energy crisis, France is facing an energy crisis as many gas stations across the country struggle to provide the fuel supplies to the customers due to strikes of union members against Total Energies over wages. Islam Sid reports.
Queues for hours. Vehicles in France struggle at gas stations as fuel supplies continue to run low to the country. A large majority of the gas stations in and around Paris have been out of service. Many motorists have been driving to several stations before finding one to join the long queue.
I think it's been about half an hour or 45 minutes that I've been queuing, but we don't really have a choice. That's the problem. It's quite annoying for everyone. We don't really have a choice. We're not given a choice, in fact. I'm at a point where I just need to find gas. That's all. And as for the price, we don't have a choice. If the price is not good for me, I can't go elsewhere, or I would go looking for hours.
A strike by trade union members at Total Energies who have been calling for rising wages has disrupted operations at 2 refineries and 2 storage facilities. Total Energies proposed to bring forward annual wage talks in response to the union members and as an attempt to end the strike. According to figures given by several French ministers, around 15% of gas stations are affected by the lack of fuel. The government has started the use of the state's strategic stocks in the most affected regions.
This queue is record-breaking. The queue will take you at least 1.5 hours, or 2, something like this.
The state has prohibited the sale and purchase of fuel in jerry cans due to the behavior of some drivers, especially in some northern areas where Total Energy stations as well as other company stations have been stormed. France's domestic fuel output has decreased by more than 60% over about 2 weeks of strike. Fraying tensions throughout the country as waiting lines stretch with drivers ready to do anything to fill their tanks.
Austrian current President Alexander Van der Bellen has secured a second 6-year term in office after he was re-elected on Sunday, according to first projections published at the close of the polls. Zara Farjani reports.
Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen secured the second six-year term in office on Sunday by winning a clear majority of votes in an election to avoid the runoff, according to projections based on almost all votes cast except postal ballots. The projection by pollster Sora put the former leader of the Greens on 54.6%, with a margin of error of 2.1 percentage points. Supporters of Alexander Van der Bellen celebrate this victory, hoping for a positive development in their country.
But of course, it is first of all a confidence estimate. If the evening turns out like this, then of course I am very happy, because in stormy times a president has been confirmed again, although there were 6 opposing candidates. And if the numbers are right, then that is of course a tremendous confirmation for Alexander Van der Bellen.
Bellen followers believe that the president is fit for the next mandate due to his commitment to halt the energy crisis.
These are also difficult political times. It is all the more important that there is a president who relies on cohesion, who relies on solidarity, and who relies on confidence. I think that is exactly what we need now, and that is exactly what Alexander Van der Bellen will continue to guarantee.
As unrest grows over high energy prices linked to the war in Ukraine, Austrian Bellen has taken the opportunity to push his party's environmental agenda, calling for more renewable energy and green hydrogen to replace Russian gas.
Pope Francis criticized Europe's treatment of migrants risking their lives to cross the Mediterranean Sea on Sunday. He called it disgusting and criminal. Francis announced that migrants are frequently abandoned to drown while making perilous sea crossings or sent back to Libya, where they end up in camps he likened to Nazi concentration camps. Officials in Nigeria's Anambra state reported on Saturday that a boat capsized, killing at least 10 people and leaving another 60 people missing. The 85 passengers were trapped when the boat capsized due to significant flooding. Rescue workers were facing bad weather conditions as they tried to recover bodies from the site of an avalanche in the Indian Himalayas within the northern state of Uttarakhand. A group consisting of 34 trainees preparing for high-altitude navigation and accompanied by 7 instructors were caught up in the avalanche. The group had been making its way back from a mountain peak. Tropical storm Julia turned into a hurricane on Saturday evening as it passed the Colombian island San Andres, located in the Caribbean off the coast of Nicaragua. The storm caused a power outage from 6 p.m. on Saturday until 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Colombia's National Unit for Disaster Risk Management reported 5 homes were left roofless and other 101 were damaged. And in a lighter note, hot air balloons filled the skies above New Mexico on Sunday during the last weekend of the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. Giant balloons in the shape of cow, ladybug, and mouse were among those that took off. The International Fiesta is a yearly 9-day festival that takes place during the first week of October, with over 600 hot air balloons and 700 pilots participating each year. All right, time for a reminder of our top stories. Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman and his French counterpart signed 11 cooperation agreements in different sectors of endeavor, emphasizing the importance of bilateral relations. Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mtala Mamra, says Algeria reached 100% of its preparation for the Arab Summit. And at least 17 people were killed in an overnight Russian shelling on Zaporizhia that damaged the area. Finally, Europe rises up against the US, saying it is exploiting the energy crisis to impose exaggerated high prices of alternatives to Russian gas. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, our program comes to an end. For more news stories, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. That's it for now. Bye-bye.